Hey there, it's Darren and welcome to the Small Business Big Idea Show. This is where you'll find the kind of inspiring, poignant, and thought-provoking interviews you won't find anywhere else. Why? Because I believe that small business owners and entrepreneurs, people just like you and me, have incredible stories to tell. But unfortunately, they often go untold. My goal is to help bring them to light so that we can all learn from each other and get better together. Now, I know you're going to love today's episode. I got to visit with Heidi Heth, owner of Haven Paperie, in her work studio. Heidi shared so many valuable insights, including what it was like to transition from a freelancer to a business owner, dealing with vulnerability, and how she keeps the creative process moving in order to meet a demanding monthly deadline to create new designs and products. So please enjoy. Heidi, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for wanting to chat with me.
So you're the owner and founder of Haven Paperie, and it's a business that's 3 or 4 years old. But before this, you were working for yourself a lot longer. You were working as a freelancer for like 12 years?
I think about 14 now. 2004
14 years?
is when I started, yeah.
And so what happened where you've been working for yourself for a long time, if you had both together, but what happened where you made the transition from being a freelancer to actually forming Haven Paperie? Was there something that triggered that change?
I think I started to get frustrated in my work. I found that I was getting more, I'd get a project and I wouldn't be excited about it. I'd get more frustrated in working in it. And I started recognizing that I wasn't using the creativity that I had in me. I was just doing projects for people, what they wanted me to do. So someone come to me and, hey, we have this idea, we want you to do it, versus, hey, we have an idea, we want you to create it. It was like, no, we have an idea, we have very specific.
So you wanted to use your own creativity. You wanted to tap into what you had versus just be a conduit for somebody else's idea.
Yes.
So the kind of work you were doing, you were channeling their vision. And by switching to Haven Paperie, you're the creator now. You're the driver of your idea.
Yeah, I started to look at all of the projects I was doing as a graphic designer, which was varied, anything from logos to business cards to web design, development, wedding stationery, custom stationery, pretty much anything you could think of I was designing. And I started to recognize in the projects that there were certain ones that I was more excited about or enjoyed more, and that was the stationery. Like I recognized that the stationery started to become my little more of an outlet, and I had a little more freedom and creativity. So I just gradually kind of began to set the other custom projects aside. I wasn't taking on any more web design and stopped doing logos. Like I just gradually kind of weeded the other things out and kept the part that I actually enjoyed.
It's interesting that you're doing all of this work, all these different types of things, and you're going to the stationery as an outlet, which means it must have been, that's a trigger right there. That if you're doing something to have some fun, to express yourself, that's usually a sign that that's probably the direction you should go in.
Yeah.
So you recognize that at some point and said, I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to make this switch. I'm going to not do some of these other things. I'm going to consciously not do these other things and just focus on the thing that I've really enjoyed. And that's where Haven Paperie came from.
Yes. Yep. My initial idea was a subscription. I was kind of brainstorming with a friend, and it was like, what can I do? If I design greeting cards, what do I do with them? Like, so I thought a subscription would be a fun thing to do. So every month I design new cards and they get mailed to subscribers with stamps.
Customers pay for a monthly subscription and then you send them a box, a shipment of an assortment of stationery.
Yep. So they get that every month. And so I think I started as a subscription, and then once I realized I had all these cards, it was like, well, what do I do with these cards now that I've been designing? Like, great, now I have them all left over. So I then moved to, okay, I need to try to find out how to get these in stores. Like, what do I do? And so moved into the wholesale world and meeting with retailers and walking into stores and kind of just, expanded from the subscription.
Finding other ways, other outlets to be able to sell your products.
Yep.
So how does Haven Paperie fit into such a digitally dominant world? So we live in a world where, smartphones have taken over, people are texting, social media, people are in constant contact. So everybody knows what everybody's doing all the time. I mean, just yesterday I was on Facebook, on my personal Facebook, and I saw a post from an old high school friend, And she said that, she had a post that said something like, holding my breath while my kid drives 3 hours to college, and he's going to let me know, I'm waiting for his text, so that I know that he got there safely.
Yeah.
And it made me laugh because I remember like so clearly, like it was yesterday back in the early 90s when I drove from Pittsburgh to California, and I was gone for 3 days without calling my mom. I didn't call for 3 days.
Right.
And so I made a post like that. I replied back and I told her that. And I said, thank goodness for cell phones, because I think we just take it for granted just how easy it is to text for somebody to stay in touch. And so with all of us being so interconnected, and Haven Paperie being a stationery company, which is sort of the traditional, long form writing, and
it's the opposite.
It's exactly.
Right.
So how does it fit into the world? Are you serving a niche, people that maybe are into nostalgia products? They're into, they still want to, handwrite some of the time, or is it people that just love stationery in general?
I think it's a little bit of all that. I think there are always those people. I mean, when I do a little smaller local show or market, I inevitably have girls or older ladies, they walk up and, I'm such a card person. I just love them. I buy them all the time. And so I think you'll always have those people where it's their thing. So that's definitely like, there's card people out there who will never stop buying cards. Same with people who will never buy a Kindle because they love books. And so I think there is the nostalgia factor of.
Or some people that do both, like I love books, but I still have an e-reader, but I love books too, because
I think there's that tactile that I think people still want to be able to hold something, to feel something, to have that paper. I sit and write, and it's using your hands versus just having something in your face, a screen all the time. So I think there is that just tactile nature of paper in general, and actually sitting. I think there's something about it even for your brain, like how it just is. It's better than just staring at a screen. Like,
we stare at screens all day long, and sometimes it's nice to give our eyes a rest.
Right.
Even though the e-reader screens are good nowadays, but it's still, there's something, the light hits the paper a little different, and I think there's something about holding it and looking at it. But the nostalgia thing, I mean, I could totally see too. I know growing up as a kid in the 80s, my uncle had a record business, actual vinyl records. And back when the whole store was vinyl records, and in the 70s and 80s, and then of course when we started getting into the 90s, it became CDs.
Yeah.
And now that's making a big comeback too. I think there's just always a movement back to, the things that the way we used to do things that are a little slower paced. So I think there's always a niche or a need to fill in that regard.
Well, I think it's almost like when something goes out of style, it then, like, that next generation sort of starts to bring it back, which is where we're seeing now record players are back and people are buying records. And I think for me, even, I recognize my bookmarks. I read a lot in my bookmarks. They're cards. They're old cards that my friends have sent me or that I've had for years. And I remember in school, that's how we communicated with our friends. We always had written notes that we folded, and they were the little football size, paper.
Right.
You sit and fold the paper, and I still have those. And I think there is something, you're not going to print off a text message or an email and use it as a bookmark. But I have next to my bed, I think on my bedside table right now, I have 4 cards that are just, I keep them as bookmarks.
That's a good point. I'm so I have kids myself. They're real little though. They're not in school yet. And I've lost touch, but I wonder if kids even fold those. That's what I grew up with. We didn't have cell phones. You're going to have 10, 11-year-olds with cell phones. You folded paper notes up and like little footballs and flicked them across the room. And
shoved them in people's lockers, like the little slits in the lockers.
I wonder if people still do that, or if it's all texting. I don't know. But
I think that'd be interesting to find out. Yeah. I can't imagine they're writing notes. I mean, maybe because they're in school, but
or the younger ones without cell phones, I guess. But once they hit the cell phone stage, they're probably the paper's phasing out.
Yeah, so. I think so.
Now you have a background in fine arts. You have a fine arts degree. And you're an entrepreneur though. You have a business and you're doing something that's creative in your business. You're a creator. Did you find that your formal education helped at all with your business? Do you find yourself calling back to things that you learned or techniques that you used or just the knowledge that you gained? Or is it just that you're doing everything on your own and learning as you go for the first time?
I think a lot of it is learning as I go. I didn't do in college, my degree wasn't graphic design. It was, like you said, fine art. I was painting and drawing and creating with my hands, and now I'm at a computer, and so it's very different. So I feel like my art degree is almost the opposite of what I was doing. So I miss sometimes the tactile, the pens and drawing and all that. I miss that.
Because what you're doing is digital.
Yeah, it's in a computer.
It's on a computer.
Yeah, I'll sketch some ideas, and so I very rarely do I sit and do like I would in an art class. So I feel like my art, it's different. It's a very different style. Business classes that I took, I just remember being so bored. And so I think it's funny, I've combined the two where it's like, okay, I have the business. And I think I've just always sort of naturally had the business mindset, kind of an entrepreneur. Started a little babysitting club when I was, I don't even know how old I was, younger, maybe before junior high.
So
I don't
that
remember,
entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, I've always kind of had that. My dad is a businessman. So learning from him and going to work with him. And he's the one who taught me how to shake hands and look at people.
So a lot of what you're doing is self-taught.
Yeah.
And we should mention here that you're also a solopreneur in your business, meaning you're the only person right now, you're the only employee. And so you're doing everything and you're learning as you go. You've taught yourself. You didn't have the formal training in graphic design when you were starting, and you had to teach yourself these things.
Yeah, I've taught myself all the design. Gotten better over the years, thankfully. Look back at some of my old stuff and I'm like, that was rough. So I think it's always a learning process. Like there's tons I know I don't know, and I can always be learning and growing and getting better. And I think as an entrepreneur, especially a creative, that's something you have to recognize. Like you're never going to be perfect, never going to be ready, never going to be like, I've got it all figured out.
You never have it all figured out.
Yeah, there's always something to learn.
And speaking of that, what you're doing is so creative. You know, you're creating this art form, you're putting it out to the public, it's coming from within you, it's your heart and soul. You're putting it out for people to see, the public to judge. I would imagine there's a certain level of vulnerability with that. So how do you deal with that? I mean, is this something that you're constantly working on? Is it something that you've been doing it for a while so that you're over it, or do you ever really get over it? How do you deal with it?
Oh, I don't know that you ever get over that. I mean, maybe there's some artists out there. I would love to meet them if there are. I don't know that you do, because it feels so personal. So I don't know that you ever get over it. I'm sure the vulnerability lessens the more you do it. I think it's always a little bit there. Like you said, it's coming from in you. It's your work. It's kind of like your guts, your heart and soul coming out. Mine on paper. So I think that always stays with you. How
do you deal with the negativity? I mean, if you ever get any, you may not, but do you just ignore it? Do you listen to it? Do you just say, hey, I'm not going to take it personally, because people have different tastes and preferences out there, and some people are going to walk by my product on the shelf, and that's okay. I do the same thing as a shopper myself.
Yeah, that's really what I've been telling myself. I just started doing a trade show in New York last year. So I'm going back in February, so my third time. But it's a huge trade show, and there are thousands of people and thousands of products. And a lot of people walk by my booth without looking, without stopping. And that's okay. Like, as much as that stings, you get people that stop and look, and then they're like, thanks. And you're like, oh, why? But I think I have had to just tell myself, like, I'm not everyone's style. I'm not everyone's product. I'm not everyone's niche. And that's okay. As hard as that is, because it feels so personal to me, being an artist, it coming out of me. But I think people have different preferences. And even for myself, when I go to a show or when I go to a handmade market or something, there's a lot of booths I pass because it's not what I want or what I need at the time. And so I've just had to tell myself, same thing, like, it's okay, I'm not going to be for everyone. And so I think it's definitely hard, especially, it's all me. This is everything that people see from Haven Paperie is my hands have touched it.
You've done it all. So, I mean, do you find as a business owner and a creative too, that you're kind of pulling from two different sides? On the one hand, you care deeply about your craft, about what you do. You love it, and it's a part of who you are. It's an expression of who you are. But on the other hand, you also want people to love it too, right? You want people to react positively to what you're doing. But on the other hand, you can't dwell too much on what people say or think, because you can get caught up in that too, and that can paralyze you, and that could, make it harder for you to do your job. And so you have to care. I find it's like, a contradiction, really. Like, you're pulling on both sides. On the one hand, you have to care deeply. On the other hand, you kind of have to not take with a grain of salt, I should say, what people say.
Yeah.
And so do you find that same tug of war yourself as a business owner?
Yeah, and I think I remind myself, again, I'm not for everyone. I'm not people might not have this need right now, so that's fine. But I do think there is that constant, oh man, I care a whole lot about this. Like, this is my heart and soul.
Right.
But then it's also, I have to take the critiques and really, I feel like there is a filter I have to use of which is valuable, which is coming, like the place that it's coming from. Is it a critique I can actually learn from, something I can grow? I'm not going to grow if people aren't telling me maybe something I'm doing wrong.
Right.
And so I think you do have to be.
There's a difference in negativity. There's a difference between
Right.
somebody actually giving you something, a critique
Constructive.
that's useful, and there's some people just being mean. There's a difference, right?
Yeah, and I think you can begin to tell that people, it's coming from a place of, hey, this will help you maybe be better, versus I'm just kind of going to be a jerk about it.
Right.
Like, I just have nothing nice to say. So I think you just kind of begin to take the negative, the not caring,
Right.
The criticism, in having a filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of what you do is creative work, and so do you have a creative process yourself? Is there even a such thing for you? Do you have a process where you get into a certain mode of being able to create your work, or do you ever get stuck? And if you do, how do you get unstuck? How do you overcome that?
Definitely get stuck. I think there's a lot of times where I'll be working at my computer and I feel the pressure, especially at design new cards every month. So there's that pressure of, man, I do not have my cards lined up for this month. I have to, I don't have a choice. I have to come up with something. So I'll feel that pressure. And I try to force it. And I can tell when I'm trying to force it because I've been sitting at my computer for hours and I'm just not, I can tell something's not done. Like, it's not a finished piece. So if I get to that point where I can tell this is just not working, like I'm not in a good creative flow, I usually stop and go do something with my hands, whether it's dishes, whether it's cleaning, whether it's organizing my office, folding cards, something that sort of takes me out of that mental and just gets me, some other brain thing starts firing and I can tell a difference. Yeah, I break away from it.
I'm kind of like that too. Like, if I have creative bursts, and when I have one, of course I'll sit down and I'll try to get it out, but then sometimes I get stuck. I'll focus. I keep staring at the same thing, and then it's not coming. And there's the tendency to want to stay there, and because you want to finish it or whatever, and because maybe it's part way done, or there could be a deadline. But I find that I actually save time by stopping, like you're saying, taking a break. For me, going for a run, or doing something else entirely.
Yeah.
Like, something switches in your head. It's almost like you focus on something else, you turn that off, and then when you come back, it's fresh again. For me, it could be just it could be an hour later, it could be half an hour later. Sometimes it's the next day, it just depends. But then when I sit back and look at it, I have fresh eyes, and all of a sudden it can come so easy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, why didn't I see that?
Yeah. Why
I
didn't
don't know
I
if
stop
you've had the
sooner?
experience that before. Yeah.
Well, it seems so counterintuitive. Like, I just need to stop designing so then I can come back and actually design. Like,
Right.
it's such a counterintuitive way of thinking. But I find that so many of my ideas come, I think, when I do shut my brain off, especially like for me, when I'm about to fall asleep, right
Okay.
before I'm in
Right before you
bed,
sleep.
about to fall asleep. I think when I've stopped telling my brain what to do and I'm no longer.
As soon as you relax, even like you're
Yes.
thinking about something else, then it comes to you.
In between that state
Okay.
of like, oh, I'm about to fall asleep, is when I almost inevitably get an image in my mind, an idea, words, a phrase. And so I keep a notebook right next to my bed, and I turn on my little flashlight on my phone and sit and jot it down and scribble some notes of what colors I thought it should be or whatever. And then I wake up in the morning and I've got my couple of designs.
As you sit here today, 4 years almost later after you've started your business, what is different than you thought it would be? Or easier or harder than you originally thought it would be?
I want to say selling myself. I think that, I know that's what you do in business, but I think it's hard as an artist when it's like
When it's your work.
Yeah, when it's your work, it's different than like, hey, cool, I created this mug. Let me go sell a mug. But when it's like, these are my thoughts, these are my colors, this is like all of my work, like, what do you think of it? And so I think selling that it's harder. It feels very self-serving.
Right.
So that's
it's different
hard.
than like somebody working for you selling it, for
Right.
example. If you're removed a little bit, you don't take it as personal, it's a little easier maybe to do it. But when it's your work, it's a little harder. I think a lot of people that are solopreneurs and business owners and they're in charge of everything in their business have that same issue. It's one I hear over and over again is people get into business and they know their craft, they know what it is that they do, but they never really thought about the selling part.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like you underestimate it, or you just think it will take care of itself, or somehow it'll happen. And then you get in and you realize, wait a minute, I'm making this product or doing this service and I have to tell people about it. Or nothing gets sold. It's not a business. It's just I'm making stuff.
Yeah. And so how do you do that? Like, what's the line of selling without being salesy, without coming across as being too gimmicky? Or I think that's all about the story, like creating your own story, and how do you create that story about your product versus just saying like, you're going to love my cards. Well, why? Like, what will they do? So it's,
yeah, that's a good point too. A lot of people that are going into business for themselves that don't think about sales, or if they do think about it, they, like you said, they think about it as it's a little shady, or it's a little sleazy, or it's not me, or I don't see myself in that way. But there is a way to be a salesperson in a positive, especially today. There is a way to do it where you can be successful and tell people about what you do and not feel, you know, yucky because you're just like that you're trying to promote your own work. I think that's the thing a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners are constantly trying to overcome. It's a big hurdle.
Well, and I think too, even as an artist, like when I bring my cards to someone, or when someone comes, a retailer approaches me and says, "Tell me about your cards." Why? You know, what about them? What makes them great?
Okay, wait.
It's like, because I designed them. Like, I don't know. It's that hard of like,
because it's like you know, but it's like you don't want to. If you say it, it's you don't want to. Go there in a way that
they're beautiful.
Yeah,
they're fun.
It feels like you're self-promoting, which you have to do, but it's kind of odd. Yeah,
it's so hard, and I think that I underestimated that.
And when you're working the trade show, you're probably the person that's doing that.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. I have had a couple. For the last 2 trade shows, I've had a woman help me, and she's been great. And it's, I feel like a lot of times it's so much easier for her because she just can talk all about them, but it doesn't feel like, oh, well, you're saying that because you did it. Like, I think that's different. Where it's, when someone asks me, like, what about your cards? I'm like, oh man, this is really hard to not just be like, because they're really well designed and they're beautiful. And
or you probably see people that are working other booths at the trade show that are employees and having an easy time too, because they're not, again, the creator of the work.
Yeah, it feels really personal for me. And so I definitely, that's been a difference in trying to sell.
Nothing stays static, right? Everything evolves, and including a business. So your business is constantly evolving. How do you see Haven Paperie growing and changing? What do you see for your business?
I see a small team in a beautiful, naturally lit studio. Having people that are in charge of the product itself, folding, assembling, packaging, having another designer. I would love to have another designer that works alongside me. I mean,
so having that help is important because you're doing it all yourself. So you're doing not just the creative work, but you have to take time away to do the actual operation.
Right.
The processes that need to get done, the accounting and the bookkeeping and everything. So having a team would help alleviate that as well.
Yeah, I think
takes away some of that.
One of my bigger strengths is design. Like I know that is the part, and that's what I love. Like I can tell there's days or even weeks where I will tune out everything and I don't get on social media and I turn off notifications on my phone and I literally just sit and design for days and I love it. But then, I can't do that.
You can't do that forever because the other things need to get done too, right?
And so I know I'm not good at everything, and so I know accounting, like, it would be great to have things like that taken care of so that I would be freed up to be more creative, to come up with new products, to reach out to other retailers and kind of grow that way.
So you want to grow and expand your business and have also another creative person working alongside you.
Yeah, where we kind of bounce ideas off of each other and it becomes more of a collaborative effort. Because I know, like I said, I'm not good at everything. And so if I do have a team, it does free everyone up to be better at their specific task and allows more time for design, which is what I actually ultimately enjoy.
If you could go back a few years to when you first started your business just a couple years ago and talk to a slightly younger version of yourself and give that Heidi some advice, what would you tell her?
I'd probably tell her, be fearless. Don't be afraid, same, but be brave. Like, I think in order to grow, in order to become bigger and better, you're going to have to take some risks. You're going to have to try things that seem very scary. The trade show that I just started doing in New York last year is big. It's very intimidating. I'm a one person. I'm like, this is just me. I'm going to go to this trade show and
When
get
you first
laughed
did it,
out
you
of.
felt a little out of place maybe
Yeah,
in the
I
beginning,
mean-
and you had to grow into say, hey, wait a minute, I deserve to be here.
Yeah, and that it took me a while to decide to do it. But I knew if I want to be taken seriously, if I want to grow, if I want to put myself out there and really promote my business like I say I want to, I'm going to have to do this. And so
You have to be uncomfortable sometime.
right. And so I decided I just had to try it.
Many years from now for you,
Okay.
because you have a long way to go, when you're retired and you're looking back at your body of work, all the things that you've done, your work life, your personal life, what do you want your legacy to be? How would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered. This is something that just came up a few months ago for me. I would like to be a person who shows up for people. I want people to know that I'm there for them. It doesn't matter what state you're in, where you are at. I want to be one of those people that's there. And I'd love for people to say she was just a genuinely authentic human being, like who was there that we could count on.
And as we wrap this up, what last thought or insight or piece of advice would you be willing to share, would you like to share with other entrepreneurs and small business owners who are listening to this right now?
I would tell people who are maybe considering being an entrepreneur or starting their own thing or whatever, I want to say listen to those things that really like spark in you. If there's something that you keep coming back to, if there's something that you recognize makes you happy, something that you feel passionate about, even if it's small, even if it feels silly, like that's something to really listen to, because that may be your business. Just that there is something about once you actually recognize, like admit that you're passionate about something, is usually once things start happening. So I feel like I would just say, listen to those things that spark you in a way where you're just like, oh man, what is it about this that I keep coming back to?
Thanks so much, Heidi. I appreciate it. Thanks so
Thanks
much
so
for being
much.
on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.